Okay, let's talk about New Year's resolutions. We're going to dive into the psychology of why our brains seem to sabotage our best intentions and how a really simple shift in the way we think can change absolutely everything.
You know the drill, right? The clock strikes midnight, and bam, we're all promising ourselves we're gonna exercise more, eat better, learn a new language, basically become a whole new person. It's this moment of huge collective optimism. And then reality hits. Just as predictably, that initial fire just fades. By the time February rolls around, those big, ambitious goals are pretty much a distant memory. It's a super frustrating cycle, but what if I told you it's not really about a lack of willpower?
Yeah, so instead of beating ourselves up and asking, why can't I stick with it? A much better question is, how is my brain actually wired to handle change in the first place? Because understanding that's the key to breaking the cycle for good.
A new calendar feels like a fresh start, you know? A totally clean slate. But here's the thing, your brain couldn't care less. It doesn't just reset at midnight on January 1st. All your existing habits, all those neural pathways you've built, they all carry right over into the new year. Your mind doesn't respond to dates, it responds to patterns.
And that resistance to breaking old patterns, it leads to this core conflict. See, inside our heads, there's this constant tug of war going on between our desire for growth and our brain's deep, deep need for comfort. This whole internal battle is really a story of two competing systems. On one side, you've got the part of your brain that's all about growth and long-term rewards. But on the other side, you have a system that's programmed to prioritize what's comfortable, what's safe, and what's familiar. And a new resolution, well, that's a direct threat to that comfort-seeking system. Honestly, from a survival standpoint, your brain is asking a totally logical question. A new habit takes more energy, right? It means leaving routines that are known and safe. And it often means delaying some immediate reward for a payoff way down the line. Your brain's core instinct is to save energy and just stick with what already works. And this is so crucial. This is not about you being lazy. It's actually a feature of your brain, not a bug. It's called neural efficiency. Your brain is literally designed to create these super efficient pathways, kind of like shortcuts, for common tasks to save energy. Resisting change is actually a really smart survival mechanism. So, this brings us to the first massive mistake that most of us make. We fall right into what you could call the outcome trap. We get so obsessed with the finish line that we totally forget how the brain actually gets there. Think about it. Resolutions like lose 10 kilograms, become more productive, or learn a new skill, they're all outcomes. They're destinations. The big problem is they don't give your brain a clear, repeatable action to do right now. The reward feels miles away, and the effort feels huge. And this is the absolute core of the issue. Your brain isn't some project manager that can just execute a goal like lose 10 kilograms. Nope. It's a habit machine. It executes repeated behaviors like put on my running shoes the second I get home from work. When we only focus on the outcome, we're basically giving our brain the wrong instruction manual. This focus on big outcomes leads us straight into another trap, what I call the motivation illusion. We have this belief that we need to feel motivated before we can take action. But the science shows we have that sequence completely backward. The brain actually works like this. You take a tiny little action, you get some immediate positive feedback from it, a small win, and that is what generates the motivation to do it again. So waiting around to feel motivated, it's a trap. Motivation is the result of action, not the cause of it. So how do we start working with our brain instead of constantly fighting against it? Well, there's a really cool analogy that gives us a new way forward. We can actually learn to think about personal change in the same way an AI learns. When you put them side by side, the comparison is pretty stark. An AI gets better through tiny, constant iterations. It gets feedback and makes these slow, gradual optimizations. Humans, on the other hand, we try to change with one giant, sudden decision, usually fueled by a burst of emotion and totally unrealistic expectations. The irony is, the AI's method is way more aligned with how our brains actually build habits that last. And that's the key lesson right there. Big, intense bursts of effort just burn out our very limited willpower. But small, consistent actions, they build those efficient neural pathways we were talking about. The mind doesn't want intensity. It thrives on consistency. So all of this brings us to the actual solution. And it involves a really profound shift in focus. Away from what you want to achieve and toward who you want to become. So instead of asking, what do I want to achieve, which just leads to those fuzzy outcome goals, try asking this: what identity do I want to reinforce? The goal isn't to run a marathon, it's to become a runner. The goal isn't to write a book, it's to become a writer. See the difference? This new way of thinking starts with the identity. Then you just identify the smallest possible behavior that proves that identity to yourself. And the most important question of all is this: what's an action that is so small, so easy, you could do it even on your absolute worst, most unmotivated day? That, right there, is your starting point. And here's the really counterintuitive truth. We expect real change to feel like this dramatic movie montage, But in reality, it's built on a foundation of small, repeated, almost boring actions. It doesn't make for a great story in the moment, but that quiet, boring consistency, that's exactly why it works. So let's just forget the grand achievements for a minute. The real question for this year is about the identity you want to step into. What is the one tiny, repeatable action you can take today to start becoming that person?